sodomy was a felony in all 50 states. That America of that day was not a totalitarian hellhole.
So you would like America to go back to that?
Yep. We wouldn't have drag queen story hours. We wouldn't have pride parades. We wouldn't have abortion on demand. Women are the kind of people that people come out of.
So you just think they're meant to have babies? That's it. They're just a vessel.
No, it doesn't take any talent to simply reproduce biologically. The confines of marriage, the husband is the head, the wife is submissive, his helpmeet. And when you enter into this, it's a believing Christian man and a believing Christian woman, both of whom want that arrangement.
In the small American town of Moscow in Idaho, a new theocratic regime has grown where men rule and biblical teachings are law. Pastor Doug Wilson, who is the man behind it all, at his pulpit at Christ Church, where he delivers his weekly sermon, is hoping Trump's America will allow his messages to spread nationally, preaching Christianity and a patriarchal society where men are in charge and women have to be obedient. Douglas has spent the past 5 decades trying to convince the American people that they should choose Christ, that both the government and the people should be ruled under the right-wing conservative interpretation of biblical law. He has written over 40 books covering theology, education, Christian living, and children's fiction, as well as thousands of blog posts and countless podcasts, one of which he hosts called The Blogcast. A senior pastor since 1977 at Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho, he co-founded what is known as the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches, or the CREC, in 1998. He built his evangelical empire in Moscow and runs a series of network of interconnected institutions that has helped him advance his religious, educational and cultural vision. He runs a publishing house, a classic Christian grade school, a Christian liberal arts college and a ministerial training program. The CREC also includes dozens of congregations across the US and internationally at 150 congregations over 4 continents. Christ Church members and affiliates own numerous businesses and properties in Moscow, Idaho as well. Wilson managed to stay outside of the mainstream right-wing conservatism for the most part in America. Now, unlike his 4 founders, he believes that Christians should actively influence politics, education and media. He essentially believes that the world cannot function without biblical foundation and God's law as standard for all of society. He believes in what is known as postmillennialism, meaning that he believed that the second coming of Christ would occur after an extended period of Christian domination on earth. A patriarchal society where wives are submissive helpers, children are obedient to their parents. Males should be the only ones with leadership roles, where women stay in the household to raise kids and serve their husband. Now, women are actually barred from holding leadership roles at Christ Church, and women in the CREC communities are expected to submit to their husbands. He also believes that women should not be in the military and they should not be allowed to vote. He would also say that parents must educate their children according to biblical principles, and in civil government, laws must be in line with the 10 Commandments. His politics essentially boil down to this: pro-capitalist, patriarchal, skeptical of big government and scornful of progressive views on a society without a hierarchy or holy men. Now, like most, if not all, Christian nationalists, his political views seem to be a pushback against the left-wing agenda, especially around the woke agenda, as they call it. Left-wing politics, in his mind, do more harm than good. He makes the point that white straight men are now considered villains in our society.
That white heterosexual males are cancerous. So masculinity is tagged as toxic masculinity.
And the only way to combat these views is with a Christian patriarchal society. It's a result of the overreaction of the extreme left viewpoints, which also got Trump in power. And Trump being in power also gives groups like his the courage to be more outspoken on their beliefs and the importance that they believe they have in society. And it's through his complete domination of Moscow through all his networks that he's been able to create the vision that he believes society should be like. Now, Douglas wasn't new to politics. He dabbled in and out mostly on a local level, but due to his extreme views, he never really gained much favour with his voters. He co-wrote a pamphlet called Southern Slavery As It Was, arguing that it produced a genuine affection between the races that he believed we can say has never existed in any nation before the war or since. Now, that's an incredibly weird argument to make, and it's totally ignorant of the brutality and horror that they went through. But it was in 2020 during the COVID-19 shutdowns that he began to become more part of mainstream conservatism. He believed that the government was using the shutdowns to see how much citizens could tolerate. He He organized a protest in Moscow which led to arrests and charges which were later dropped. But footage of the event would go viral, and Trump would use this as a political tool to appeal to more voters. But this also would convince Douglas that perhaps Trump could be the best way to create the Christian valued society he so desperately wanted. He spoke at Turning Point USA's Believers Summit hosted by MAGA lover, of course, Charlie Kirk. In 2022, Trump selected Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. Now, Pete and his family would become members of the CREC, with his kids attending classical Christian schools affiliated with Wilson's American Association of Classic and Christian Schools. Haggett himself had some allegations thrown his way too, with being accused of paying someone off who accused him of rape. Haggett recently reposted a video of Wilson openly advocating for reinstating anti-sodomy laws.
My point is that when I began ministering in 1977, in the late 70s and early 80s, and sodomy was a felony in all 50 states, that America of that day was not a totalitarian hellhole.
So you would like America to go back to that?
Yep.
The homosexuals needed to practice celibacy. He also made a weird analogy about how the government dictates regulations in building a bedroom, so why can't they have a say in what goes on in the bedroom, which is such a weirdly poor argument. Health and safety practices for building is not the same as homosexual sex. It's such a weird analogy. In a 2013 debate, Wilson argued that homosexuality is forbidden by Leviticus chapter 20 verse 13, which he considered a divine command that merits civil punishment, even death, echoing biblical law concerning capital offences. He would also do multiple debates with Christopher Hitchens in 2008, who was a staunch atheist himself, which helped him become more mainstream in the public eye. Despite his extreme political views, there are other darker things that have occurred that Wilson deserves criticism for. One thing that is common across a lot of Christian denominations, of course, is sexual abuse. Wilson has received criticism for downplaying cases of sexual assault, marital violence and child abuse within the CREC community. He, of course, denies this, and many argue, and rightly so, that the teachings in his communities either excuse or encourage these acts against women because of their patriarchal views, that these rapists can be reformed by the church and forgiven with no legal action taken whatsoever. For example, a former deacon, Alex Orloyd, was indicted in 2022 on federal charges for possessing child pornography. The church removed him from his role after becoming aware of his porn habit and not because of legal action. He entered rehab and received pastoral care, whatever that means, with church statements indicating that he had extended forgiveness. Wilson also oversaw the marriage of Stephen Sittler, who was a convicted child molester in 2011, and continued to affirm the union, calling it wise and righteous, despite criticism that the congregation was kept in the dark for nearly 8 months. In those examples, it shows that Christ Church protects the predators over the victims, shielding them from any real prosecution for their crimes. And they're not the first to do this, of course. It is not in any way surprising. Then when it comes to sex, he believes that it's not an egalitarian exchange of pleasure, but an expression of biblical authority and submission, where a man penetrates, conquers, colonizes and plants, and women receives, surrenders and accepts, because in his view, true authority and true submission are erotic necessity. Now the language he's using here is clearly disgusting. Conquers, colonizes and plants, and also receives, surrenders and accepts. Like, what the hell? Like, this man clearly has never pleasured a woman in his life. And you gotta feel, in a society with such misogynistic views, that a lot of these women just go through their lives in these communities never really feeling the real joy of sex. And God love them, that's a rough way to live. Now, of course, Wilson's support of Trump isn't surprising either. Despite Trump having more secular conservatives in his circle, like the tech elite billionaires, and up until recently Elon Musk, Wilson strongly believes that despite that, right-wing politics is the only way forward for evangelical society. He strongly believes that the secular experiment of civil governance has been a moral and political disaster of the first order. Now, of course, his anti-abortion stance isn't surprising, which is why he was a big fan of the overruling of Roe versus Wade. Another reason he might be a big fan of Trump is because people are now formally asking the church to remove gay marriage rights. Now, the scary thing about all of this is that his followers are growing, especially in towns, through his network of schools and canon press that he uses, as well as his church continually expanding. He's focusing more on conservative towns with Christian values, so it makes it a lot easier for him to spread his message. A lot of his ideology, most would argue, is barbaric and backwards and completely authoritarian, sexist, homophobic and morally wrong. The argument that a secular society is somehow worse than the ideals of what he thinks is right is also clearly wrong. But unfortunately, people are more willing to join, even women who are essentially agreeing to being oppressed.
He is the head of our household. Yes, and I do submit to him.
But it does make you wonder, what is America becoming? And is it for the better, or are they going backwards? People like Douglas, who commonly like to be an authority on what is morally right or wrong, tend to be the ones implicated in the very things they claim are wrong. Everything he believes society should be benefits him. He's a man, he's straight, he's white, and they are the very people who have the most to gain and very little to lose. It's the women that lose, gay people that lose, minorities that lose, because apparently God only loves straight white men more than anything else. And now I know some people will push back at me for my criticism of Douglas, but the thing is, I don't agree on his stances at all. His views on society is simply backwards, and it's the kind of rhetoric that is dangerous, that will do more harm than good. Because at the end of the day, he's using a religion as a cover, like they all do, to be racist, to be sexist, to be homophobic. Isn't the real message of God supposed to be to love everyone? But according to Douglas, it's about having control over everyone that isn't the same as him. And it's just morally wrong. And if there is a God, I don't think he would agree with it. But that's it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe as always if you enjoyed the video. And let me know in the comments down below what you think. Do you agree or disagree with me? Let me know a million different ways I was wrong or right. Hopefully we can have a discussion that is beneficial for us all, because that's the whole point. But that's it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Peace out.